Is this thing on? Are we doing that thing again?
We're doing this thing. I'm doing it for a couple of reasons besides Wakanda Forever.
We will see about Wakanda Forever.
I know.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing
Brother and the Man, Season 2, Episode 1. Not by design, but here we are.
We are here. We are back at you. I'd like to apologize that we took a longer break than what we probably intended to. I got to be totally honest, like real life got in the way a little bit in the form of work, so much so that I had to take off the shirt I was wearing earlier in order to appear neutral. So that way I don't want to be implicated or associating anything at my place of business with the show because people are sensitive.
Really? Is it that bad? Yeah. My work has been, it's at least personally challenging, depending on who you talk to. I'm over at least, well, I'm finding it personally challenging. I'm having trouble balancing some things. There's a lot of things that come at me. We're particularly busy in January, February with Mother's Day. And that was my big project for the first quarter. And we pulled it off, but it was a major time and mind sink. And we're getting ready to go into Mother's Day, which is that same process repeated again, although it's a lot smoother this time because February went so well. So everything is now well in hand. But, it did get busy. We wanted to take, I guess, like the holidays off. We did a Thanksgiving special. We did a Christmas special, both live. And then we intended to get back like maybe for the Super Bowl. And it just didn't happen. And it wasn't for lack of trying. We would schedule, when do we want to record? Well, let's go Saturday. Okay, Saturday, I'm working suddenly, or, we'll go Tuesday. Oh, I couldn't get off work until 9:00. And it just kept getting away from us. So this is the first time we've been able to actually set a date and make the date happen. Here we are.
We are here. And like I said, we're sorry we went away for a while, but the important thing is we're here, and like a lot has happened since our Christmas special. Like a whole lot has happened, and you're like, holy cow, where do you start? One of the things you mentioned is coming back for the Super Bowl. That's actually one of the things on my list of things that I'd like to recap and talk about. We can just dive right into it if you're okay with it. Let's dive in.
Let's set the tone for this episode, though. We are coming off of, I'm mentally and emotionally exhausted much of the time, even when I'm not busy. So, and we are picking this up a little bit of impromptu. And so the idea was to have this first episode where we kind of reset the tone, kind of get re-familiar with what we're doing. And we have no agenda. I have no idea what you're going to bring. Yes, a lot has happened, but off the top of my head, we're beginning of May, 4 months already in the bag. And I'm not thinking of anything in particular, except for things that are immediately happening in the last few weeks. So whatever you coming up with, I'm going to just react to, and that's the whole point of this specific episode. No Jeff, no guests, just you and me kind of resetting the tone, and then we'll have an agenda for the second episode and going
right. And what I'm hoping happens is, like, because of how heavy last year was with when we actually got back into the podcasting, like, I think we may have only done only one show that was kind of like light, and that was the 4th of July special. Otherwise, everything was pretty hard hitting because so much was happening because of the previous administration and how they did things. And so it was, so what I am looking forward to is that we get back to the spirit of what Brother and the Man was first founded upon years ago. That's what I hope that we do. Not only politics, but a lot of pop culture stuff that we can talk about and get into. So that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. And I it's a good goal to shoot for, but at the same time, some things that I know that we're likely to talk about, or at least that are present in my mind, are more of the same, except we're hitting a higher frequency. And it feels like, okay, he's gone, but he's not gone. Everything I was worried about last year is coming true, or is potentially there. it this year continues to be a challenge on
Hmm.
multiple fronts. It also, to be honest, is a damn sight better than last year, 2020, the year that time will forget.
Hmm.
So we'll be grateful for that. But what do you got? Oh, and we'll talk about the title of the episode, but I'm calling it "Do What You Like."
Yes, absolutely. And so I guess that's one of the first things we can talk about is the transition of power, or almost lack thereof. So Joe
Mhm.
Biden gets elected president. We knew that was going to happen. And we had a lot thrown at things like, I don't accept the results and all of that. Well, it kind of boiled over January 6th, where you have this horde of assholes that descend on Congress, and pretty much it was an insurrection. That's pretty much what it was. They descend, they break into Congress or the Capitol building, tearing shit up. You got Congress people running for their lives and everything. And honestly, that's an act that's not forgivable. I think I may have told you, and I was serious about this. It's like, once I knew all of the lawmakers were out of the building, I would have done an airstrike on the Congress building and blown all the motherfuckers up, to be honest with you, because we can rebuild a building. But I felt we needed to send a strong message, be like, what we're not going to have is citizens rising up because they don't like the result of an election. You can
I
protest it all you want, but what we're not going to have is you invading the damn Capitol building. No.
I agree. I agree, and I get concerned because, and I get accused. I've said this from an indirect comment a couple times. So that's from the previous season. So we're starting to get a reputation, the two of us. But one of my concerns is, um, you have a shit ton of people that were protesting and went too far with the protests, and that's the meme that they'll put out is, we got carried away, we didn't know it was going to be bad, we didn't mean to do any harm. Some of these guys were there with bombs, some of these guys were there with handcuffs, the nooses. Okay, some of that might have been for show, some of that wasn't for show. Okay, so taken as a whole, the movement was actually an attack, and it comes from what? We don't like the results, and or we're so deep into QAnon that we believe that there's conspiracy actually going on, and we're going to force the vice president, former Vice President Pence, to undo it somehow. It comes from ignorance, it comes from stupidity, it comes from an inability to, for lack of a better term, accept a shitty result. How long have your people been living with shitty results, right? And that's something that 2020 puts in my mind on a regular now. I was always aware of it. It's an academic thing, but now it's not academic. It's built into my cognizant process. So, and I think that's white privilege, which I'm also always concerned about, where you've got people that, don't like things not going their way, and they want to take up arms against it, or scream about it, or threaten to take up arms against it, whatever happens. And it also is a little shocking that you bring that up, because I hadn't even thought about the fact that we went off the air before the inauguration, let alone all the shit that happened around it and
Mhm.
since. So yeah, I wasn't happy. And it was amazing to me, as a kind of almost a moderate, or maybe even a reformed conservative, who have a lot of friends who are a little bit more to the right of me, and kind of liked Trump, not because he was Trump, but because they really are afraid of what could happen under a left-leaning administration, which
Mhm.
we're beginning to see some of that, right?
Mhm.
So, and my counter to them has always been, well, you shouldn't have picked Trump. If you pick Trump, then everybody runs away from him. You have to live with that result now, right? That's what
Mhm.
we have today. So if you hadn't been so extreme, then we wouldn't have such an extreme counter swing, which is what we have now. And it's not even that extreme, but you get the point.
Mhm.
But
Right.
on that day, as that was happening, and I'm talking to those people in my office, they were disavowed. This is not me. This is not my
Mhm.
people. Well, yeah, it kind of is. Were
Mhm.
you anti-Trump from the beginning? Because it's all wrapped up. You can't bail once the ship has hit the iceberg, right? So I
Right.
can say with an honest heart and a real resume, I was anti-Trump. I'm anti-MAGA. I'm anti all this stupidity, the QAnon, the conspiracies are a joke. They always are.
Mhm.
So to live in that world with that anger all the time is remarkable. And going back to my original statement, I don't think they're gone. In fact, I know they're not gone. They're out there.
Mhm.
Memories are short. So all of the bad things that they did, that they were part of, that they saw, they will forget, and they're going to come back stronger. And Trump is still out there.
Right.
He's hoping today that the Arizona recount for the fourth time may somehow make him president. It doesn't even make any goddamn academic sense. The math doesn't hold up.
No, it doesn't. And like, okay, so you win Arizona, you still lose the electoral college vote. Like, come on,
Yeah.
man, get out of here.
So
You know,
to a certified,
Mhm.
Anyway, what else you got?
Yeah, it's over with. Staying on it, and I don't want to be totally negative, like everything has been bad, because it's not all bad. I have some nice things on here, but staying more, not necessarily along those lines, but more that's happening. You mentioned like the more of a left-leaning agenda now that we have Biden in office, and he's got both branches of the he's got the House and he's got the Senate. Barely, but we still got a lot of shootings going on. We still got mass shootings, and
We do.
let me be the first to say, like, and this is probably going to disappoint a bunch of left-leaning friends, but people know where I lie on things. Like me and my wife, we have this discussion and everything. I do not want to see a total ban on guns. And academically, when people think that Biden's just going to come take all your guns, well, I'm still waiting on Obama to show up and take my piece, right? They said that before, so that's not going to happen. But there do need to be some controls in place. And like, you're still not going to stop 100% of these things. Like, we had one in Boulder that wasn't too far away from one of the offices I manage out here, like 3 miles away. And a lot of people that work in that office go to that particular King Supers. We had a guy shoot up a damn massage parlor. We just had a guy shoot up a damn FedEx plant. Like, the list, it's like, this is getting to the point, and we're going to talk about this, but it's almost as common as seeing black men getting gunned down on video by cops. It's like, you don't want this to be normalized to the point like, oh, I got to turn away from it because I'm desensitized. You need to react to this, because it's like, this is insanity. And I honestly feel part of the reason this keeps happening is because it's not necessarily because people have these guns. And I admit, you shouldn't have certain military grade weapons and everything. You should be able to buy. Should you control that? We can have that argument, but I don't want to see all guns gone because I own a gun. But I honestly 100% believe that because our response is usually so weak to these situations, that's why they keep happening, because these guys know, oh, well, if I'm a white male, I'm probably going to walk away from it. Most of those guys probably think about that, black or white. Well, I'm probably going to walk away from it. And I think you and I, we've had this discussion before. Like, I think hate crime laws and anti-terrorism laws should be the same. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to hear like, okay, you kill this black man, hate crime. No, act of terrorism, throw the full book at him. The same case in this thing with mass shootings. I honestly believe that the moment that you get the call, hey, Andy, we got this situation at the King Supers. Dude just broke in and shot 3 people. Active shooter, act of terrorism, interact anti-terrorism laws. And I feel as a response, and this is me just on my soapbox, that's what this show is for. I just feel like at that particular point, I'm not trying to negotiate to get to be like, how can we stop the loss of human life? I am thinking about the stop of human life, but I'm not thinking about yours, you, the perpetrator. What I'm thinking about is, how do I get in this building and cap your ass without hurting any more folks? Because clearly, I shouldn't have to respect your life since you went into an area and decided to start taking lives with no regard because your life sucked or you didn't like a result, your girlfriend dumped you, whatever it may be. I'm so sick and tired of that. I am sick of it. And I'm more sick of the response that we give. We need to have a strong response to the point that you want deterrence. I guarantee you, you go into a school, you brandish a weapon, we are fucking you up. And pardon the language, but that's what it needs to be at this particular point. And I'm not bloodthirsty, don't get me wrong, but I'm capping you because I'm not watching you cap 20 and 30 people anymore.
Yeah, and you have said that, and you've been consistent with that, and I've been consistent with backing off of that because I see real problems with that approach. I get it. I get it. I get that it's not fair for a white guy to go into a black church in Georgia and when it's all over, they're all dead, and he surrenders and walks away in one piece. Or the guy, you said so much. Part of the problem, both with blue on black violence, blue on brown violence, blue on anyone violence, and these mass shootings, is that both of them are becoming so common that I literally cannot keep track of them. I tune them out, and it's not that I don't care or that I don't pay attention to the news. It's just I can get into a mode where my head is down for a day, and I look up, and the news has moved past it, and
Exactly.
I'm oblivious. I can't keep track of every African American who's being killed by police officers legitimately because of an accident or purely hateful, and everything that's in between, because I think there's examples of all of that shit. Accidents, severe, mistakes, severe, and outright hatred, thinking you're going to get away with it, and but they all are a problem. They all deserve to be respected and addressed. I can't keep track of it.
Yeah, because
I
it's
can't
starting
even
to
keep
all
track of. I can't keep track of rappers dropping right now, let alone
right.
other things happening.
It's
So
all meshing together because it's happening so often. Like, dude, I jumped online today and I see another one didn't happen in another place. It's like, good Lord, like
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
insane.
And
The amount of violence that
I
we
don't have
have
a
in this country.
I don't have a solution for it, right? So you have a piece, I have a piece. Mine's right here at my knee in triple locked. I couldn't pull it out right now without having to stop the show to get all the keys, but I have one, and
Right.
it's for target practice, right? And
Mhm.
if they banned it totally, I guess I'd give it up because we would have some security. But you're right, banning weapons is not going to work, not for any number of levels. Number one, it's like
Mhm.
the Constitution is absolutely clear. So arguing
Mhm.
about that is a waste of time. It's mouth work to try to make people happy. I
And
get
then
I
the
get the
and the
idea.
other thing that you have to look at, what people don't look at, is simple economics. We make money in this country. Guns sell a lot. You're not
Yep.
about to get ready and cut off that amount of money that's coming
Right.
into an industry like that.
And the NRA, right? The NRA, for all their flaws of being soulless bastards who will do anything to get what they need on their agenda. And I'm not a big NRA fan, to be clear, but they make valid arguments. They make an argument that guns don't kill people, people kill people. But
Hmm.
I laid this out for you. I submit that with some exceptions, violent crime, whether it's guns or something else, fall into three categories. And it's people that are willing to be criminal. They want to take
Hmm.
something from you, and they're willing to
Hmm.
use violence. Those people will find their guns because they're not going to respect the law. So
Right.
if you make guns illegal, they'll still find them
Right.
unless you're going to smash them all. Then they'll switch to knives and swords, and we'll have to carry about
Hmm.
knives and swords. Number two, there are people who are politically motivated, terrorists, and they fall into the same basket. They don't care about your laws. And there are wackadoodle crazy people. The problem with most of these mass shooters is that they're people that are despondent, that they're upset. And I think that what we really need to do as a practical solution is we should be looking at mental health in the United States and how we refuse to address it. We don't take care of it. In the 60s and 70s, we thought that we would treat everything with therapeutics, meaning drugs or
Hmm.
treatment. They were promising, they were new, and because they were promising and new, we were all in on them. The problem is that they don't work in every case, and they we close the hospitals. There are some people that need not be on the street. Hey, where you can get to a gun. If these people weren't getting to the guns and doing these mass shootings, then they could be wackadoodle crazy racists talking about how the revolution's coming. That's fine. Say that in your rubber room. Don't go to the church, right? That problem is
Right.
solved. But we're not willing to do that. We're not willing to invest the time, the money, the effort, the imagination, even to have those
Hmm.
conversations. We're not even willing to have the conversation about what the actual root cause is and what are some
Hmm.
practical solutions. It's always don't take my guns. We got to get rid of all the guns. Well, neither of those are going to happen.
Hmm.
Something's got to give, but that's
Right.
fine.
And I
What
and
do
I,
you
and
guys think?
I I am okay with addressing the mental health aspect of it. And, that's why we study folks and all that. But what I don't want to get escaped is a lot of these things are calculated acts of terrorism. And that's why, like you said, you bring it to the point. If they came and said, right now, we're taking your guns, you got to give yours up. I got to give mine up. Fine. People are still going to find a way to get their gun. Or, like you said,
Right.
they're going to use knives or swords, whatever they want to use. Right. And that's why I'm a proponent of we need to have a better response when these things happen. That's why I'm on with the whole
When you
response
say
thing.
that, it always fascinates me because the fact that you of the two of us, the
Hmm.
black man is the one that's the harder core on law enforcement and hammer the bad guy.
Right.
That always fascinates me because the presumption that white suburbia would make right now is that
Hmm.
black people want less law enforcement. And I know that I'm playing the
Hmm.
devil's advocate for
Right. I
that
know.
group. I
Hmm.
know that the more sophisticated answer is we want more good law enforcement and not,
Right.
number one. But you got defund police and
Hmm.
coming out of liberals and Black Lives Matter both, and it's a
Hmm.
regular theme. So now you're going to
And
pick and choose when you're going to deploy this
I,
immediate lethal force.
I can speak to that though, because like I always tell people, I'm very pro police. But what I am above being pro police is pro do your job correctly. There are
Right.
consequences on my job when I don't do my job correctly. Same thing should be for police. We do need police. I don't know if I get the whole defund police thing. I want them to do their job right. And we need to
Right.
make them do their
Right.
job right, because there are bad actors that we need to take care of, and I want the full extent of the resources on those actors, like the mass shooters, folks like that, like the pedophiles, and I can go anywhere with that. So that's what I want to see, because if they're going to keep me employed at my place of business, they're going to say, you need to do your job right. Here's what you need to do, or else you're gone. That's what I want to see from police. I'm very pro police, but I'm pro do your damn job correctly. And I'm sorry, if somebody's running away from you and you shoot them in the back, at that particular point, you've done your job wrong, because that person is not a threat to you. They're running away from you. And we could get into right now, good segue, we had the George Floyd verdict a couple of weeks ago. Chauvin is going to prison, a just verdict. It seemed like a no-brainer, but as I saw a lot of black people, myself included, there was all, even though it was so common sense what this guy did, there was always a tinge of, I don't know if I can stand the heartache by watching this live if they say this guy did nothing wrong and he's off. That was a legitimate fear that a lot of black people had, me included. Like I said from the beginning that he was going to prison, but even still, as it got time to read the verdict, the thought crept in, because it's happened so many times. Like, what if they do the unthinkable here? What happens? Like, what hope do you have for this country for people to do their job correctly? It was a just verdict. Unfortunately, around that time, there was a young kid in Ohio, and we have not discussed this. We have
We
not
have
discussed.
discussed this. We
Well,
have
we
discussed
we
this.
discussed it on text a little bit, but I don't think we
Yeah.
discussed it face to face, or in this medium, to
I
where
was waiting to see if you have the balls to say what I think you're going to say.
right. And this is going to make a lot of people mad. And if you're willing to listen to me, you can, or turn it off. It is what it is. That police officer that showed up in Columbus was in a very difficult situation. And the reason why I say that is, when he showed up, it wasn't just a fist fight. The kid had a gun, right? And I get it. It's a kid, right? Or sorry, the kid had a knife. And I get it that it's a kid, and we're saying, like, here's what you should have done, especially when you take in Minnesota. A lady pulled a gun, shot a guy, when she said taser, that's what she thought she had. Not what people need to understand is, not all police forces are built the same or have the same type of protocols. Not all of them carry tasers, right? When that cop showed up, this is what I saw on the video. And what I saw on the video was, he had a choice to make, because she was about to get in and stab another girl, and there was a black man over on the right that was about to kick another woman on the ground. Like, I don't even know what the full brawl was about. And it seemed to me, at least if I was in that situation, that he had a choice to make. He saw knife, he saw black dude about to kick a person. I know this person's not going to die if they get kicked. She could die because she's got a knife. What do you do in that situation?
So we could talk about 4 different blue on black
Right.
events, all
Hmm.
of which are current. Um, George Floyd
Hmm.
was doing some illegal stuff
Did deserve to
in
die
a
though.
nonviolent way,
Right. Hmm.
and a police officer came and had to put him in his place and say, "Man, just shut up. You're subhuman, and I'm gonna have to lean on your neck for 9 minutes while you claim that you can't breathe. And then
Hmm.
when it's over, you're gonna be dead." And wow, didn't see that coming. So that's one extreme. Then you got recently, you've got someone who was pulled over for whatever reason, and police officers produced guns. Not sure why there were guns, but he went diving back into his car. There was a violent action.
Hmm.
Police will react. The reaction part I get. That's always going to be the case. They're in a terrible situation of trying to make these decisions, and they have the right to go home. They have a duty to try to protect the entirety of society. So when he's diving and she says taser and a gun goes off, now we have to deal with the question of, was that legitimate or not? And I don't
Hmm.
know. I
I
haven't
don't
seen
know
enough, and I'm trying to stay away from it. I do believe that it was an accident. Even if I don't think she pulled the trigger, and then tried to get off by screaming taser at the same time because this guy had to die. I continue to be doubtful of those situations, and maybe that's the white guy being white privilege or whatever. But I've said this to you regularly for years now, that I think that even if you are a racist and you hate black people, and it would be the greatest thing in your life to kill the next one, to do so in the modern day is unintelligent because you're going to get caught and you're going to get crucified. As soon as that happens as a police officer, your life is over. So I don't think there's a whole lot of police officers that are voluntarily doing that, which
I I will
almost builds in a benefit of the doubt
I
in
will
my
say
mind when it
this.
happens.
I will say this about that particular situation. And here's where, look, I don't know what the chick was doing, but I do know there's a difference in weight between a damn gun and a
Yes.
taser. I know
Yes.
that much. And you, as a 26-year veteran, and you, as someone training other cops, I, that doesn't compute to me.
There's any number of things that shouldn't happen to, or
Mhm,
should go on that shouldn't allow that to happen. They go by muscle memory, right? The
mhm,
gun is here and the taser is there. They weigh differently. They're aimed differently. They kick differently.
mhm,
I have no explanation other than I want to give her the benefit, to give that police officer the benefit of the doubt that they weren't there to kill a black man or kill anybody by
mhm.
pulling out the wrong weapon. But clearly it happened, or I'm wrong and naive. And I've been proven that to be the case quite a few times over the last few years because, again, I don't want there to be black violence. I definitely don't get the Asian violence claim, but clearly that's real. We've talked about that
Man,
recently.
yep,
So it is what it is. I have to get over my own naivete. There was the person you talked about where there was someone produced a knife and you have police officers on scene. They have a job to do. What would have happened
yeah.
if they hadn't shot that young lady and she had stabbed them? Would they be protests against them for not doing their job?
And
You
see
know,
that case is fascinating right there because I like unless there's some audio that I don't hear or angle that I don't see, man, I don't know what the right decision was to do right there. It's easy to say, it is easy to say, like, well, you could have shot her in the leg or
no.
anything like that. I don't think that's practical because
People say,
she
"Why did
was
you shoot her in center mass? Why didn't you wing her?" Have never shot a gun. It's not realistic
right.
to
You
say.
never shot a gun.
It's
It's
you're
not.
speaking from ignorance. You need to shut the fuck up.
And I really do think in that, and maybe this is me being naive, and I'm sure the black people that listen to our show are going
All
to
6
school
of
me
them.
on this, all six. I know I'm going to get schooled on this if they disagree, but I feel in that situation, like I don't know what the right answer is because you can't let her shank the other girl. You can't do that. You can't.
Right.
And I do feel like given the situation, if that was all white people that were doing that, once a cop sees a knife and you're about to get ready and shank, and you see the guy over here about to kick this girl's not about to die from a kick unless Randy Orton kicks her in the head. And that's a little bit of WWE for you. I shouldn't joke about that. But that's
Randy
how they
Orton.
that's how they make his kick seem in the WWE, like he just kills people with his kick. But the situation, I have to believe, and maybe this would be being naive, that if it was all white cast and they see a knife, that you got to pull that gun and you got to shoot. You can't. If a cop lets a person gets killed in front of them getting shanked, and you're right there, I got to think they're gone from the force too.
That's part of my point. And one of the things that I promised that I was going to do starting in season 2 is I'm going to be less trepidatious about
Mhm,
choosing my words, because I think everybody that watches this gets where I come from. Go back and watch season 1. I'm going to
mhm,
stop trying to have disclaimer after disclaimer saying, "Oh, I get it, and I don't want to offend," and all this shit. I'm going to try in part to be a voice, as I perceive it, for this white suburban majority that I think has good intentions, and I keep insisting is out here. There are white people that don't hate black people, and they thought they were doing it right, and they want to know how to do it right, how to do it better going forward. But when they look at this situation, the very specific observance, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody on the black side of the conversation, is they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't in this situation. Because if they shoot the guy,
mhm,
excuse me, if they shoot the young lady with the knife, then they get protested, and at least in many cases, their careers are now in jeopardy. And that's going on right now. But if
mhm,
they hadn't, and that had been released on video, that a police officer had failed, intentionally held
mhm,
back until it was
mhm,
too late, and an African American had died from the dereliction duty, they'd be in exactly the same situation, except they would be guilty of something. They would be guilty of
mhm,
not doing their job, which is
right.
why I keep thinking about, I don't know why anybody would want to have this job. And then it extends the conversation into white suburban living rooms, where they genuinely don't know what the African American community wants, because they see it. And this is an old theme, and I know we're talking about apples and watermelon, or comparing apples and oranges, but watermelon's bad. I always use that because it's bigger, and that's what we said when I was growing up in Greece. It was apples and
Right.
watermelons, or grapes and watermelons. But you get it. Okay, unintentional humor. No,
Keep
no
going.
ill intended
No.
intended. But you see blue on
Mhm,
black violence, and we all go, wow, that's terrible. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it doesn't, and everybody has different opinions. That's fine, we'll put that aside. But then you do see a repetitive drumbeat every night. I live in St. Louis still, where you come from, and we see it every night. You cannot get away from the first 7 minutes being a list of all the violent actions that are happening in North County, North City, East St. Louis, because black on black violence. And we don't see, as a white community, what we see is a combination of, if there's a blue person shooting a black person, that's a protest, even if it appears legitimate, as in this case in Ohio, and at the same time, there's very little upset, or at least visible upset in our eyes, uh, for black on black violence, which is rampant and is far more damaging to the community, the economy, to the lives of the people that are there. And then we as a white suburban community throw our hands up in the air and go, we just don't know how to deal with it. We don't know what to do other than have sympathy and hope it gets better. We can't solve
But
it. We don't know what you want. You seem to be inconsistent. And that's part of the problem, which is why we need to continue to have this conversation, and other people need to have conversations like it. But
but
that's a
I
real
think
challenge.
but I think that's an intellectual scapegoat, though. When they automatically want to go towards like black on black violence, we don't know what to do. Crime is intra-racial. That's what it is. So, you could say, well, 86% of the crimes, black on black violence is 86%. Well, I'm pretty damn sure white on white violence is up there too. Yeah, but like we know that crime is intra-racial, because you're most times you're committing crimes against people in your own community. You're committing crimes because you move to where you feel comfortable. So, that's why, I get mad about the whole black on black violence thing, because like you're intellectually choosing not to actually have a constructive conversation, because crime is intra-racial. So we can throw the whole black on black thing out, just like throw out white on white violence and everything. It's violence. And the one thing I think I've been consistent on is like, look, if the brother
But
is running away
but
from the cops, don't shoot him in the back. If the brother is like showing an immediate threat where he's pointing a gun at somebody, cap his ass. I'm okay with that,
yeah,
right?
but you and I are not good representatives of the communities that share our
True,
appearance in many cases,
true,
right?
true,
Because I
right.
get what you're talking about, but the counter argument is, if you black people were consistent in what your upset was, then we would be able to have a much more constructive conversation. When you were upset with Michael Brown, you had a legitimate claim. If you are upset about George Floyd, you probably have a legitimate claim. And look, society put that guy away. We got that one right, hopefully. But then you maybe don't have a legitimate claim in Ohio, and yet
Yeah.
there's at least to a certain degree a certain amount of protesting.
I'm curious
So
how that's going to
so
turn out. You know,
well,
I am.
right, but when a white person sees that and goes, and yet at no point I just
Mhm.
got on watching the news and I saw it's a joke, Pierre, because what you see is you'll see there was today at the Quick Trip at Florissant, there was a shooting in daylight. One person died, two people went to the hospital, and here's a clip of whatever person was on the scene, their mother or a bystander saying, "The guns on the street have got to go. This is terrible. Why would we want to do this to our own people?" You see that on a regular drumbeat. Most of the reports don't get that because there's so many of them, and we're
Mhm.
so desensitized to them that it's a 10-second entry, another 10-second entry, another 10-second entry, and now let's talk about the weather. That's the world that we live in. It's rampant across the Midwest and the Northeast, and
Mhm.
and it's and yet it's not an issue that most people see. Be very careful with my words here. White people are not seeing the marching, the protests, and we're seeing at the same time an inconsistency with the protests. So it's like the takeaway, the stereotype that's building is if you're blue and you kill someone who's brown, you're fucked and you're done and you're evil, and the entire situation was evil in all scenarios. But if you're black on black, that's an internal thing we'll deal with. Just send us money and we'll figure it out. And that's the takeaway that white society is starting to build up against. That's part of the reason that someone like Donald Trump can get elected. And there's a schism coming that's amplified by social media that apparently existed before social media, but social media has now made raw and
Mhm.
active and live. Um, I used to talk on Black Twitter. I can't talk on Black Twitter anymore because I'm white, and I don't think there are a whole lot of people on Black Twitter who want to hear from me, and I get that. So I just listen. But we're getting to a point where the conversations, at least where things are sensitive, out in the suburbs where people have shotguns for white people, and in the inner city where we're in many cases, all of us, you and me both, afraid to go. There's the society's being pulled those two directions.
Mhm.
And then when we're away from those places, like right here, in many cases, we don't want to talk about it because it's too sensitive.
Right. And no, I agree. We don't want to talk about it. It is too sensitive. And it really is a very and I think because it's so nuanced that no one is willing to actually have that hard conversation.
Right.
We're willing to have it.
Right.
A
But
few people that we've had,
we have a
right?
great deal of trust with each other,
Right.
and that goes back more than a decade, right?
True.
I wouldn't have this
Right.
conversation with someone. I wouldn't have this conversation with some of your guests without you
Hmm.
giving me cover. I wouldn't.
Right.
It wouldn't be.
Right.
It wouldn't be realistic or practical. It would be.
Hmm.
It would be inappropriate for me to have this conversation with people who. It would be inappropriate for me to have this conversation with anybody outside of this
Hmm.
context
Hmm.
because you don't know who you're going to upset. You don't know
Right.
what you're going to say that's incorrect, although you have good intentions.
Hmm. Right.
You,
No, totally get
Bert,
that.
Bernie Sanders ran for president 8 years ago, not 4 years
Hmm.
ago, 8 years ago,
8. Right.
and was pro. He's the most liberal person in the world. He's the best person for Black community that exists as a white person in power in the
Right.
United States, probably. And he was protested by the early version of Black Lives Matter because he didn't know that it was inappropriate to say all lives matter, even though we
Hmm.
all agree that all lives matter is correct, but we don't say it because
Hmm.
we now understand the marketing that Black Lives Matter has put out, what that motto means, and the point it's trying to make. But he was attacked at an early campaign thing when running for
Right.
president in 2016 because he was so insensitive and so uninformed to make that terrible tragic mistake. It's the political correctness has made the conversation impractical. That's the biggest problem we have with
Right.
guns. We can't talk
Hmm.
about mental health. We can't talk about practical ways to shut down guns. We can't talk about why we may or may not need AR-15s or why an AR-15 is not different from a Winchester 22. We can't talk about um, why do we need to send more money to places where money's already been spent and there's been no positive traction. We can't talk about political differences. We can't use out of the box thinking to say maybe we need to have a new conservative party that isn't Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nobody's willing to have these conversations because it's so dangerous to offend somebody.
Yep. So moving on, and hopefully this is the last piece of bad news that we have to address. So we've had quite a few deaths. Quite a few deaths to begin this year. Very notable people from you mentioned rappers. We
I
lost
mentioned rappers
DMX,
because we got what, three of them in
right,
less than
in a
2 weeks.
week. Right, we lost
Yeah.
DMX. We lost Humpty Hump or Shock G. We lost Black Rob, and then the same day that we lost DMX, we lost Prince Philip. You know, not a rapper, but you know he's the royal family, and whether people like it or not, that's I don't care too much about the royal family. You know, we whoop their ass for a reason to become, so that way we don't need to care about them. But I get the standing in the world for it as far as like the importance and everything. So we've had, and I know I'm probably leaving out some ones. Those are just the recent ones that like pop into my mind because they were so recent and they were like bam, 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 bam is what it was. Like, DMX, I kind of had a feeling that he was going to pass once everything happened. And so I was prepared for that. Prince Phillips was 96 years old, I believe. So prepared for that, not that really affected me or anything, but I was very surprised by Black Rob and Shock G. The Shock G would really hit me.
I watched
no, not Shock G,
I watched the Shock G funeral for 2 hours yesterday, and I noticed several things. So number one, to put a little look, Shock G's brilliant, and Sex Packets is the one rap album from my youth that I still listen to on a regular basis.
Right.
I've got it memorized. So I'm a big fan of his, and he's got a giant legacy. Given that most people only know him as the real person behind Humpty Hump. I went to work and I was like, man, this is terrible. And I talked to a couple of people that are our age, and they were like, yeah, I heard that the guy that did the Humpty dance. I'm like, no. I mean, yeah, but Shock G was more than the Humpty dance,
right?
Especially personally for me. But a musical talent. But reading his bios, and they was like he knew what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a producer and a rapper. He wanted to be in the music game, and his original intent was to. Is that your desk?
Yeah, I got an electric sit stand. I got one for my wife now too. She liked mine so much that she wanted one. Setup is awesome.
You send me the info on that because I might get one for Jen for Mother's Day. I think she would like that as well.
Gotcha.
But Shock G passed. Okay, and I was reading his bios, and when he was forming Digital Underground, his original intent was to make it all political, to be kind of like a tribute to. It was. He was going to make a tribute to the Black Panther movement, but then Public Enemy started doing it better. And so he thought that he was going to, that niche is already filled. So he went the opposite direction and made it whimsical, which doesn't speak to the genuine effort in the first part. If you're going to be political and then you're going to abandon it because there's no money to be made, because then you really weren't that political to begin in the first place. But I was watching the funeral for like 2 hours with one eye. It was on Facebook streaming. And I thought this will be cool because I want to see who's there because his impact was huge. And they didn't show the crowd, but I was looking like, was Money B going to be there? Was Chuck D going to be there? Because these are people he knew. Was MC Hammer going to be there? Because they were friends, right? So I don't get a sense of that, and I had to. I forgot. I learned two things about watching that funeral. Number one, I had forgotten how very long-winded African Americans could be at a fucking funeral. That funeral was 3 hours and still going. And I don't understand how you guys do that. Sitting in the heat. I hate funerals. That's a little levity that I think he would appreciate. But the other part of it was they had all these tributes come in, and I did not see all of them because I thought they were like, I saw a 4-piece tribute. And I thought this is the best they could do, but then I realized there was a series of them that were being played out over the funeral. Like they would do a song, and they would do 10 minutes of tribute. But they had Rob Bass, who no one has seen since
Whoa.
1988. And he looked like no one had seen him. It was a terrible thing.
Hmm.
Peace to the family. And he was out. It's like they took him out of some sort of tomb himself. But the other one was David Faustino did a tribute, and the kid from Married with
From Man
Children.
with Children, right?
He's all. I guess he's a rapper. He ain't a very successful one if he is, because
That's right. He is. I'd heard
he's a
that.
great DJ, man, and I just think it's terrible that he's gone. And he was the whitest guy doing black voice,
Right.
which I always fucking laugh my ass off. It was entertaining, and it was also very somber. I hate the
Hmm.
fact that he's gone.
Hmm.
DMX lived life hard,
Hmm.
um, you know, but for Shock G to be gone at an age that isn't 10 years older than I am,
Hmm.
for him to have trapped himself in the legacy of the Humpty Dance and not be able to break out of whimsical and do jazz or funk, which is what he really
Hmm.
was wanting to do. And he does on the albums, but he couldn't get that translated to the mainstream.
Right. Hmm.
And he ended up in a situation where he was a touring novelty act. And I can see where drugs would come into your life if that's all you had to show for a
Hmm.
lifetime's worth of talent and work. Apparently he was cracked out on something, and it played havoc on his body, and
Hmm.
he's passed away. I
Right.
hate to see it. That one hit me really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Shock G hit me pretty hard. Like the other ones, not as hard. Like DMX. Like if and I this is the first time I'm making this parallel, but not only did I like DMX, do you remember the band Stone Temple Pilots?
Yeah.
So their lead singer Scott Weiland, basically him and DMX were kind of like the same person, where it's like in and out of rehab and the drugs and everything. And so, hell, with Scott Weiland, they have been saying he died like a million times. So where like when he finally died, I was kind of like, are y'all sure this time? That was kind of like how I felt about DMX. And not
Yeah.
that these guys weren't creative geniuses, they were. And it's not like they were bad people. They were just the dog decide that he wants to speak now, and he's pissing me off. But anyway, the dog is pissing me off live on this show. But no, so with DMX, it was something I was prepared for, to where it's like, okay, he's finally at rest from his demons. Kind of like how I felt about Scott Weiland, finally at rest from their demons. So I wasn't quite like, God, man, I'm bummed out about this. It was like finding their rest. It was more like relief is what it was. But Shock G, yeah, man, that it's like, man, I was legitimately bummed out by that. And I think I was bummed out by Black Rob too, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Black Rob didn't have as big an impact, but I recognize the talent and the name. And so when DMX died and Prince Philip died, that was the novelty of that day, because I believe they died the same day. And Prince Philip dying is probably the whitest thing that's happened this year. And you
It,
gotta respect the guy because of everything he's done. He's got problems. He was far too politically incorrect, and he threw his tongue out. But maybe that's what we need. I don't think he had ill intentions, although he clearly wasn't a us and them type person. He was like my grandpa. He loved black people and protested for them in the 60s, but he didn't want to have dinner with them. So, that was a major flaw of his character. But Prince Philip had that reputation, but Prince Philip was also someone who literally gave his life in service, and for the most part kept his mouth shut. I have a lot of respect for the royal family, and maybe that's just me being an Anglophile and having family that's in England, but I do, and I think that they give far more than they take, and so for him to die at 99, almost 100, it was impactful. And then DMX dies the same day. um, you know and my wife is like, what did DMX do? And then, you put on some music, and she's like, oh, I know this music. I go, that's the guy, and he's no longer with us. And so that's his legacy. And it is significant. And yet it's also alarming. Again, I can't, I have a hard time. I know Christmas wasn't yesterday, but it feels like it was the day before yesterday. And we haven't recorded in 4 full months.
Right.
And to go back through this list of other people who died since we've joined 2021 in progress. We lost Hank Aaron. That one devastates
Yes.
me more than anything
Yep.
else, because when I was little, he was the man.
Mm-hmm.
and
Life well done.
a trailblazer, and no one has anything bad to say about the guy. He was that proper mix of pushing politics without making it personal,
Mm-hmm.
which I think we've lost track of. Some old white people have died, Cloris Leachman, nobody cares. But the one that Christopher Plummer, there are three people that I think that we've lost that are really worth noting. Within a week of each other, we lost Larry Flint and Rush Limbaugh. And I
We
could
could
give
have
four
Rush
fucks.
Limbaugh.
Those guys, it struck me as they look exactly the same.
They sure
They
do.
did in their suits and their bloated faces.
Like for Les Limbaugh, I'd like to pour out some piss for him, but otherwise.
I've said that this whole, and we've talked about the source of it when it started, but I think the political conversation and the polarization and then the fact that oil and water will not mix right now, I think I really go back, and the fact that news isn't news anymore, that news is now opinion and sensationalism. I take that back. In my opinion, it started with Rush Limbaugh in the very early 90s when he had his syndicated talk show. And to sell commercials, he had to take his opinions, which may or may not have been genuine, and make them. He had to turn it up. He had to make them controversial. They had to be something that were sensational. And then you have a tit for tat with people wanting to be even more sensational than the last guy, or the opposite. And that's where we're at now. With everything is turned up to 27. But he's also, from a certain perspective, the same piece of shit kind of guy that Larry Flint was. It's really interesting how they're cut from the same kind of cloth. Selfish. Around the same time, Christopher Plummer died. But
Such
the
a
one that I think,
dignified man.
yeah, and
Christopher Plummer.
a great talent. I hadn't realized that he was the guy in Sound of Music till I went back and watched it. As much as my
Yeah.
wife is a fan of that movie, a very great talent. But the one that I think is most devastating, and that we didn't see coming, and that will damage this country for a generation. On February 1st, we lost Dustin Diamond.
I shouldn't laugh.
No, you shouldn't.
But no, it's sad that he died. Okay,
Think of all the porn that
wrong.
didn't get made.
I know all the porn that get made. Let's backtrack a little bit. I mean, to talk about Larry Flint, like I said, we're pouring out piss for Rush Limbaugh. I might pour it out of my own dick, to be honest with you, over his grave. But that's a whole
Did you
different
find
story.
that thing?
What? His grave?
Your dick.
Okay, whatever. But right here, right across your forehead.
Yeah.
But with Larry Flint, I mean, I got to give him credit to introducing me to a lot of stuff when I was a young boy. I didn't know, I didn't know he was the one I had to thank or look. I'm not about to get ready and cuss this man's name. I'm not going to do that.
I think that Larry Flint was a waste of time.
Okay.
He did do anything that was worth commenting. He was a capitalist. He made money.
Yes,
he had
he
no
did.
qualms. That's it. I mean, good for him. I have no problem with Larry Flint. He didn't break any laws, but he's not some civil rights.
We're not adding him to the
giant.
sainted or nothing
No,
like
we're
that.
not,
No,
for sure.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, the only thing he contributed was like, if you go back, okay, there's his magazine. He contributed for us to be more extreme by the generation to where now all this stuff you used to pay for in a bookstore or wherever or by subscription, you can just find anywhere by putting in the right domain.
Of all of the people that I'm looking at on this list, on this other screen I've got going on, the only one that I think that might be worthy of the sainted would maybe be Shock G. And as much as I think that he's a talent and moved hip hop forward, I don't think he rises to that occasion. And I promised you at the end of last year that I was going to be super hard on sainted and hated list, and we haven't filled that in yet.
We haven't
we
filled
have
it
some
in
ideas.
Yet.
No, we should do that.
Hank Aaron comes awfully close.
Hank Aaron does come close, and I was actually scrolling at the top of the list. So, yeah, Hank Aaron probably he's worthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
and depending on how Hall of Fames have a tendency to fill up with thousands of people and lose their novelty, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to be a hovel. The Major League Baseball Hall of Fame puts 5 people in every year, and they've been doing it for 100 years. Now you're approaching 1,000 people. That's a long list to try to parse out if you don't know about baseball. So I
I
don't want
think
to fill
we
up the Sainted with
right.
60 people.
I do
But
think
Hank Aaron, it gets very close.
he gets very close. And I want to say this about Hall of Fames because
I
I've
think
had
Jackie
this
Robinson more
discussion.
deserves it.
Right. Probably
Sorry.
Jackie Robinson more deserves it. His last name's
Right.
Robinson, and plus he paved the way for Hank Aaron. But no,
What were you saying? I'm sorry.
I would say this.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'd like to do a show on Hall of Fames because about legitimacy. Because you raise a good point about how Hall of Fames have gotten. And I'm gonna get off of the mood for a moment, but it's a good segue since
Yeah.
we're talking about tragedy, and I want us to get into more lighthearted things a little bit about Hall of Fames, particularly baseball Hall of Fame can be a joke. Okay, the football Hall of Fame most times it's legitimate. Basketball Hall of Fame, I think they need to have an NBA Hall of Fame, and because with basketball, it's like everybody can be in the Hall of Fame no matter. Like Christian Laettner is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Christian Laettner was a great college basketball player, but you put him in the same Hall of Fame as Michael Jordan. No, there needs to be a separate Hall of Fame for the NBA. And I'm not going to get too much into this because I'd love to do that as a different show. Where I'm going with this is the WWE Hall of Fame, because I was almost trending toward it being a legitimate Hall of Fame from the standpoint of what people gave to the business, because they put Eric Bischoff in the Hall of Fame. On the hill, if you look at it, you cannot write modern wrestling history, without Eric Bischoff because of what he did with WCW. You can't.
That's true. He deserves to be there.
Right. But here's the reason why Paul Heyman does, but here's the reason why I'm kind of like, I don't know if WWE is a legitimate Hall of Fame either, because, and me and Irv go back and forth, and I'd love to do this with other wrestling fans. The Steiner brothers should be in the Hall of Fame. The Steiner brothers ain't going to sniff the Hall of Fame because people don't like how much of a loose cannon Scott Steiner is, and he's upset the wrong people. And if you think about it, that's kind of like what baseball Hall of Fames are or NFL Hall of Fames are, because what they do is, because you pissed off the media, you said something, oh, we're going to hold T.O. back 2 years because he said this, when T.O. should have been a first goddamn ballot Hall of Famer, right? The Steiner brothers are Hall of Famers, but because Scott Steiner made the wrong people mad, they're never going to sniff it. And so maybe the WWE is a legitimate Hall of Fame because they're operating just like these others, because you got to kiss someone else's ass. The Hall of Fame is supposed to be about accomplishments. And in the terms of WWE, it's about your contributions to the business.
So the Hall of Fame should be, in my opinion, there should be a series of things that happen. Number one, you have to set a standard. What are you going to base your Hall of Fame membership on? Is it the performance in the activity, like meaning on the field if it's a sport? Is it your overall impact on culture, moving that product forward? Is it your overall impact on culture as a person? What is the standard? And you can set it any way you'd like, but once you have that standard, you need to be consistent. So if you have a baseball Hall of Fame that doesn't have Pete Rose in it, it's not legitimate. It never will be. Pete Rose is one of the most impactful players ever, one of the most significant set of stats ever. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame because he didn't play by the rules. He did some things that were shady, and specifically that the commissioner at the time, Roselle, hated him and has banned him. The fact that he's still not in the Hall of Fame makes the MLB Hall of Fame, in my opinion, illegitimate. The fact that Vince McMahon runs
Pete Rose is being punished for post-active career. That's what he's being punished for. And I don't. And
he was still managing
and the base. But
he was managing when he was gambling.
But the point I'm making is this: he's not nominated for the Hall of Fame as a manager. He should be nominated as a player. And because of that, I think he should be in as a player.
Sure.
Right? You can't discount what the guy did as a player.
Put an asterisk next to his name, right? This is that whole, again, this speaks to this whole, I try to big picture everything when I can anymore because it helps me see things and avoid hypocrisy, which I hate. But it's this whole inability to tolerate something that we don't like, right? So if there was a comedy Hall of Fame, Bill Cosby better be in the motherfucker, even though he's in prison for some shady shit. And you know how I feel about the guy. But like the art, hate the artist, you can't deny what he did. Pete Rose did some things that were wrong. My dad was extremely angry about the concept of Pete Rose because it's the same reason I don't like Bill Cosby, because it was such a slap in his face because he was such a legitimate fan, and have this guy go shady and be betting on his own games is a major sin. But the guy's also a good guy. He has paid the price for 2 generations now for getting caught doing that stuff, and his contributions on the field in the 70s and 80s as a player manager. How many player managers do we have in history?
Not many.
And then as a manager, the guy deserves to be in. If you need to put an asterisk,
and here's the thing about it. It's like, I agree. Put your asterisks, right? And what you can do is say, like, yes, he's in our Hall of Fame, but in an official Major League Baseball capacity, otherwise, he's bad. And I'm good with that. He can never be a manager. He can never like step foot in a league office. I'm good with that. But you got to put him in as a player. There should be consequences to his actions.
Right. And again, it repeats across all of these things are flawed.
Right.
What is a Hall of Fame? Well, it's really, I mean, there are some Hall of Fames that are probably legitimate. There ain't a whole lot of people that aren't bowling fans going to St. Louis to see the Bowling Hall of Fame or the Chess Hall of Fame. So I think those are probably legitimate because that's probably real tribute because there's no money to be made. But you talk about the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Okay. For better or for worse, AEW aside, NWA aside, the wrestling world in North America, in the English speaking world, belongs to Vince McMahon. It has for 2 generations and probably will for another 10 years.
Maybe three generations,
So he controls that Hall of Fame. It's absolutely his product. And there was a potential there for this to be a legitimate history museum. But no, it's not that way, right? Bret Hart doesn't get in until he does his mea culpa and comes and gives them permission to sell videos. The Steiner brothers can't get in, but Jake the Snake Roberts can get in because it's somebody that they could put on stage that year at WrestleMania, right? The Ultimate Warrior only made it in when he made his deal with Vince. So does the Ultimate Warrior deserve to be in or not? That's a separate conversation because Vince didn't care. Vince, and there's some legitimacy. He's going to put in, the Undertaker deserves to be in and was put in. Great, wonderful. But picking and choosing winners and losers based upon whether or not they were willing to appear on stage, or you could make bank off of them after they're passing away, and that's what Vince McMahon stinks of. With his Hall of Fame, I pulled up the website here for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That thing has been going for 25 years. They have 338 inductees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and all of them are great artists, I'm sure. But seriously, 340 people over 25 years. And there's no consistency with the selection process. It's favoritism, it's bribery, it's social politics. It's a few people that don't like you keeping you out. It's a few people that really like you bringing you in. And how and even its definition. How do you define rock and roll? Because Dolly Parton's in there, and the Beastie Boys are in there. What rock and roll did the Beastie Boys do? What rock and roll did Public Enemy do? As much as I like Public Enemy,
they're not rock and roll.
How do we define rock and roll?
Right. And like what they need to do,
because I guarantee you Bon Jovi's not going into the hip hop Hall of Fame.
So change the name of it and say, this is the Music Hall of Fame. Going in the rock and roll wing, here's Bon Jovi. In the rap wing, Public Enemy. Country wing, Dolly Parton. She got a fucking goddamn estate, amusement park, whatever you want to call it, named after her. Name a damn wing after her, right? It's like, but they need to change the name of that from like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because that's rock and roll is a genre of music. They need to go ahead and just call it the American music or world music, whatever you want to call it, the Music Hall of Fame. Here's what wing they're going in.
Okay, so we agree. We've made a decision officially.
Mhm.
Brother the man think that Hall of Fames are stupid or they're failures. Let's put it that way. The
Right.
concept is legit.
The concept is legit. Yeah, absolutely. But the
So
way they do it, though, speaking of Hall of Fames, Tom Brady won number 7, which
he did, and it's remarkable because
Mhm.
you say goat, and did he and Belichick cheat? Well, they did. They got caught multiple times. And if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So is that wrong? I don't know. I don't like the fact that they cheated. I'm never going to be a biggest fan of his because he was a Patriot,
Mhm.
and the Patriots are counter to my favorite team. So I have an automatic dislike for the guy.
Right.
As
Mhm.
much as I like Boston. And I want to be a Patriots fan. And I always pulled for him when he was in the Super Bowl if it wasn't
No,
against
you don't want
a
to be a
better
Patriots
team.
fan. You're a Dolphins fan. You can respect what he did, but still hate
Right.
them bastards. Still hate them.
But if he's playing Dallas, I'm going to pull for him and not Dallas. So, it's
Mhm.
situational. But man, he went to a loser team. He brought one guy with him and he dragged them to the Super Bowl
He
and
did.
and beat last year's champion.
Mhm.
And
Handily.
and the kid that may be better player than him, ultimately speaking.
Mhm.
Um, it's like you can't. He is the greatest player of all time in that position. I don't
Yeah.
know how you argue.
Yeah, like, and this is me from the hardest core of 49er fans and loving Joe Montana. I gotta give it up to Tom Brady. I
He
do.
makes things happen.
He makes things happen. And because the thing about it
He's
is,
your
it's
age,
like,
and he won the 7th Super Bowl with a loser team that had never seen him a year before.
right,
So
exactly. I mean,
Rob
he
didn't do that for him.
he was the single factor because it's easy to be like, well, Bruce Arians, look, that was all people can get mad. That was all Tom Brady because Bruce Arians is an air it out, put the ball out there coach. And Tom Brady
Mhm.
went in there and changed the culture. I like Jameis Winston. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not getting to the Super Bowl. They're not even making the playoffs with Jameis Winston because he's a turnover machine.
Right.
Tom Brady is not a turnover machine. There's a right and wrong and risk, reward, and leadership type of thing that comes with it. Whether people look, it's easy. The reason why I hate when people be like, "Oh, that's a system player," it's just because of the system. The reason why I hate when people say things like that is because if you have a system that works and this is the perfect player for it and you can't stop it, that's on you because you know it's coming and you can't stop it.
You
Tom
can
Brady,
say
Tom Brady went to a totally different mindset of a coach, a totally different situation in a totally different conference and won the Super Bowl. I
yes.
don't know what else he need to do.
Yeah, well, there's nothing else left to be said. I mean, so people that would look at him and analyze, it's a genuine analysis that he plays for Belichick, and Belichick is a great coach, and
Mhm.
Belichick makes some shit happen, and Belichick ain't done. I mean, he had a great draft this week, so Belichick is not done.
No.
But when you separate the two, and Brady literally goes in, he takes Rob with him as to ride shotgun, and to give him some yaks, and to be a third down player.
Mhm.
He makes an impact, but he's not moving the scoreboard by himself. And the two of them go in there. They have no sense of the team. It's a roster that's young and unproven and has issues, and a system that is totally contrary to anything they've ever done and what they are good at and what they want to do. You can see Tom Brady making mistakes. His turnovers numbers are going up. He is
Mhm.
older. He is not as accurate. He cannot throw as far all the time, but he makes things happen.
Right.
His ability to do things is the intangible that Joe Montana had
Right.
that
Mhm.
separates Joe Montana from Dan Marino and John Elway.
Mhm.
It's the fact that he can make things happen.
And on
And that's
both
what
sides of the ball too, because that's the thing about Tom Brady or the Joe Montanas is that they've got so much cachet to where it's like it's not just about the offensive side of the ball. There's the defensive side of the ball where that defense is playing with the confidence of saying, like, you know what? If we give up this score, we know we got this Tom Brady guy, because Tom Brady is not going to go, damn it, Levante David, that was your guy on defense, and now I got to go. Tom's not going to do that. Tom's going to say, don't worry, Levante, they scored, but guess what? I still got time on the clock. I got you. And it's that confidence between the two right there.
And that's an intangible. Now we're getting into football analysis, but that's an intangible that can't be outspoken, because you'll hear about how this team is going to win because they're the best offense. No, they're playing the best defense. And okay, well then it's not. They're not two teams. If they are two teams, they're not going to win. Right. You have to have the in high school, I was a defensive player, and the idea that that you do not have to stop this guy from scoring a field goal, because you're going to have a chance to do better in 5 minutes when you're sitting on the bench and the offense comes in. So at that point, you don't have to be. You can play a prevent defense with some confidence, so you can stop them from going downfield. You can hold them to 20, 30 yards over 10 minutes and keep them out of the red zone and force them to take 3 points instead of 7. Because if you know that you can give up 3 points and your goal is to stop the 7 instead of trying to stop any score, which you always should try. But if you have that ability and you recognize that challenge of the more aggressive defense, you're more likely to make mistakes. If you play an up front close defense and you play people tight on the line and you blitz too much, those are when people break out and make bigger scores. So that's a bigger challenge. It's stress, if nothing else. So when you know that your guy can produce, and he knows that you can defend, that's a comfort level that will produce real impact on the field. And that's just one way that he is an excellent quarterback, an excellent leader, an excellent athlete. Just the way he lives his life. I mean, we're the same age, and I'm a big old tub of lard, although I'm getting better. But this guy hasn't even seen a piece of cheese in 30 years, right? So he's living life right, at least in that sense of it. So he's the full package, and he takes it seriously, and he's legitimate.
And people can try to hate on him all they want, but at some point you just got to give it up. Tom Brady is the GOAT. And hate to do this right now to my Packer fans out there, because they got some stress going on. That's what separates. Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the most gifted throwers of the ball, actual pure throwers, him and Patrick Mahomes, most gifted throwers of the ball you'll ever see. And they don't have the Tom Brady intangibles to where it's like, I may not be the best at this, but I know how to maximize what I got to make us successful. Got to give it up to him.
In one little sense.
What's that?
Green Bay's had a rough time with quarterbacks because they do so well, but the situation, I mean, Brett Favre and now this guy, it's just I was thinking about how when you get to a point where you're good all the time, like the Blues were up until the 90s or the 2000s, the St. Louis Blues, or the Miami Dolphins were until that same period, you're so consistently good that when you do start to fall down or you do have drama at that high level, it can be it's like the Cardinals now. Like when people get very upset with the Cardinals don't immediately go to the playoffs because we're so used to that consistency. Brett Favre kind of fucked them up, and now to have Aaron Rodgers come in and then be leaving with drama, it's almost like, man, people in Green Bay can't catch a break in the long term because they keep having to have this melodrama, but they have to blame their team. Right. The situation in Green Bay right now is one of that team's own making, right?
Yes, exactly. Great. That's their problem.
It's great to bring in a rookie and have a plan, but you've got one of the greatest quarterbacks currently playing, and
you had other needs at the time. That's the issue. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would have had a problem if the Packers had taken a quarterback. If they had stayed at the position they were at and took a quarterback, he wouldn't have had a problem. If they had drafted one in the second or third round, he would have had a problem. They traded up last year. They gave up draft capital to go draft his replacement when they needed other pieces. And he's like, wait a second, I'm 37 years old. I don't got too many more of these years. we've got this window, and you're thinking about rebuilding when
But
we can.
moreover, he delivered. He said, I'm
Right.
37. I'm playing like I'm 32 still. I'm not asking you to sign me to a 10-year contract, but give me some clout, give me a sense of security so I can retire and open car dealerships. And and
Or
and
host Jeopardy.
if this guy doesn't, yeah, that's another thing. And if this guy is not going, I'm here. Keep me here or bring him in, which is what they're doing now. He said, you had to pick or choose. You didn't choose me. I'm going to go somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that they're now acting like they're not going to help him with that is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And Green Bay is America's team right up to the point that they start acting stupid. And now the polish is off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all they had to do was make him the franchise player, take the quarterback that had a lot of potential and trade him to get something and then
Mm-hmm.
show the legitimate need. But he can't get along with the GM. The GM can't get along with him. The team can't give him the vote of confidence. I don't blame him for wanting to move at all.
I
And
know.
where's he going to go? The AFC West? God bless. That's going to be a shootout next year.
Yeah, it is. So the talk is Denver. He said he had 3 teams on his list: the 49ers, which obviously I would love, the Raiders, and the Broncos. And if he goes to the Raiders or Broncos, that's box office right there. Him against Patrick Mahomes 2 times a year, whichever one he goes to. So we'll see.
And you spoke about Patrick Mahomes not being up to the level of Brady, and he may not
But he's
reach that.
24, right? 25.
That was my point. This kid has one thing that Brady never has had, which is the athletic scramble.
Mm-hmm.
He can do things that physically that I say Brett Favre, that
Tom
Brady never could
cannot
do.
do. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And he's still doing them in his 4th or 5th season. He's in his mid-20s and he's still productive. He came away from a concussion and was still able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was expecting him to be like that right up to the point he got knocked on his ass, and then he would then fall into the pocket. He's still producing. He's still scrambling. Can he keep that up for 10 years? I don't know. Brady doesn't throw as well 10 years later
Right.
that he used to. He just retrained his arm and remained proficient.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mahomes is a good, accurate throwing quarterback. He's a good leader. He's growing into that role, and he's good at making things happen that are intangibles, physically speaking. If and when he loses that, does experience fill in? Does he become that kind of football personality?
I
I
think
think
he
he
will.
will.
I think he will
I
because
think he could be better than Brady ultimately.
I think he could too. And because I think he's already graduated to that point to where it's like you expect him to win every game when he
Yeah.
steps onto the field. Like he's that damn good. And so I like Patrick. I like Patrick Mahomes. I really do. I wish we had drafted him when we had the chance. We didn't. But no, like overall, I like Patrick Mahomes. I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. I like Patrick Mahomes. It's like with Seattle. I hate the Seattle Seahawks. I love Russell Wilson, though. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Covering a couple of other things. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching Jeopardy. I did. And I
lost
can
Alex
keep it simple.
Trebek.
I can keep it simple because there's not a lot to unpack there from my perspective. I moved back from Europe when I was a little kid in 1983, and I was there for the first episode of Alex Trebek watching Jeopardy because my dad sat me down and said, "This is the kind of show that you're going to like as you get older," and we watched it together. And I went back and watched that first episodes on YouTube, and man, did Alex Trebek look like he was from the 80s. But the man was a great guy by all accounts. He passed away. He was hosting the show in pain, like a warrior, like a week before he passed away. So, he's another guy that we've lost. And now how do we replace him? And he's got to be replaced. I watched the first half dozen hosts, a couple episodes each. Katie Couric was horrible. I'm a big fan of Ken Jennings, and that guy was a disaster.
Oh yeah,
Aaron Rodgers wasn't any good. I don't know who you put in there, and I don't know what I'm looking for, but the only one that I think might even have a chance is LeVar Burton.
No, me.
No.
I've got the charisma.
You lack intelligence.
What? Get out of here. I'm the smartest person you know.
Nope.
Mm.
But that indicates, because you don't know who I know, and you can't count bodies, because if you so you probably can't even do first grade math. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? There's no chance.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, but the tryouts by all these celebrities, okay, whatever, it's novelty. The only one I thought was halfway decent was the guy no one had ever heard of, who was their executive producer.
Mm.
Apparently he has some experience being like a game show host or something in a previous lifetime, but
Well,
I
here's
thought
the
he was decent.
well, here's the thing. Like I haven't seen LeVar Burton, but that's
He
what
hasn't gone yet.
he hasn't gone yet. Okay, that's who everybody wants. Like I didn't see Aaron Rodgers, so I'm going by what you're saying. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
are like, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers did great, and now and to the point to where it's now like it's a legitimate thing. Like, well, I hate the Packers now. They disrespected me. If you ain't going to trade me, I'll go host Jeopardy for the rest of my life. Like, was he that damn good, or
I don't
what?
think he
What's
was
your
that
opinion?
good.
Okay,
I don't think he
gotcha.
was that good. Um, the one that was really bad was Ken Jennings, and he had
Right,
to go first, but he's not a host.
right. He's not a
You get
host.
to a point where Katie Kirk was really really bad, and she's got a lifetime of being on camera, and I like
Mm-hmm.
her, but
Mm-hmm.
she when watching it, and she would ask a question, and she was articulate, and they would answer the question, and then she would add the commentary. Some of the time when they had the commentary about, yes, that's correct, he was actually the first president of Zimbabwe or whatever it was, they say it without being on screen, and with her voice and the way she was presenting it, and it being the question and not someone speaking as a video, it felt like I was watching the Jeopardy video game. It was just so sanitized,
Right.
and it lacked any kind of flavor, and I felt that way about a lot of them.
You
I
want
didn't watch
flavor?
all of them.
Get Vince McMahon to host it. No,
Yeah,
he's kind of ancient
Vince
now.
McMahon
Let's
is not going to host Jeopardy. Why? I'm trying to have a serious conversation about the future of one of the most important television shows in the
They need a
world.
new host. You don't think he'd be a good host? You want
No,
charisma.
and if you want charisma and intelligence and something that checks some political boxes, LeVar Burton's your guy. I'm already telling you that's
True.
who they're going to go with.
Yeah, let's hope so. Maybe they're gonna him being the last person to do it. I think, from what I understand, he's the last guest host, or what are they doing to where that's going to say, by the way, I'm here forever, bitches.
He may be closing the season, so they announced the rest of the season, which will
Mm-hmm.
end here in the next several weeks. And then they'll take December off. They'll do some tournament shit, reruns, and then they'll come back in September with some sort of host. I think they have a sense of who it is already, but LeVar Burton campaigned for it, and people campaigned for him on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter. Like when Alex was sick, they were like, LeVar Burton's kind of out here, and we kind of like him, and
But wait,
reading Rainbow.
Alex Trebek picked his successor though, and who he wanted. Who was it? Who was it? It was the black lady that was on C. God, I can't remember her name. I need to look it up. That's who Alex Trebek wanted. I don't know if they got her, but Alex Trebek, from what I read, it was a black lady on CNN, younger lady. I gotta look it up. Is what I'll do for our next show, or you can
You're not
look it
talking
up
about
now.
you're not talking about Soledad O'Brien, are you?
No, not Soledad. It wasn't
I think she
Soledad.
would be excellent, but
But no, it was a younger black lady. And what I mean by that, she might be at the most in her 40s. But that's who Alex Trebek said. And obviously, but everyone else is campaigning for LeVar Burton, but Alex Trebek had a different I'm gonna look this up right now.
yeah, let me
Alex.
say this while you look that up, because I want to speak to something else. And this is me being an asshole. That's fine. I have that reputation, and it's earned honestly. I loved Alex Trebek, and I was sad to
Mm-hmm,
see him go. And yeah, I just complimented the guy, warrior, right? But fuck, the guy is
mm-hmm,
dead. Can we quit paying tribute to the mother grabber? Like the Ken
mm-hmm,
Jennings came out and did a great, thing about. He was the first replacement host. He came out and
mm-hmm,
said, I don't know how to fill these shoes. I'm going to just try to have a good week and not trip over myself, blah, blah, blah. And that was great. And the second season and third season or episode, okay, we're 6 months later. This dude had done been in the ground almost a year now. And, you don't have to mention him every single time the Jeopardy music plays.
mm-hmm.
It's okay. I get tired of hearing about it. I have relatives in England, and they were complaining to me, and these are pro royalty people. They were complaining about too much Prince Philip having passed away coverage.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was 99. Everybody knew he was dead. He just hadn't been told yet. When they
Mm-hmm.
told him, he keeled over as was proper, and they put him in the ground. Have the
Right.
funeral, but we don't need to have his bio play 24 hours a day for seven days.
Right.
It's the same thing with Alex Trebek. I'm tired of hearing about the guy.
Mm-hmm. Laura Coates is her name. That's who he said if it was going to be it's like he had suggested, like he said, there's an African American woman. She's an attorney. She's a legal analyst. Her name is Laura Coates. That's her name. That's who he had suggested officially. I don't know if she's hosted Jeopardy or not.
I don't know who that is. I mean, I can see her picture here.
Right. She's cute.
Is she gonna guest host?
I don't think I haven't heard her name as a guest host. She's cute. Don't tell my wife, but she's cute.
Okay, you cannot judge people based upon their physical appearance. That is
not
appropriate anymore.
I never said I was politically. I just said she was cute. That's all I said. I just said she was.
Well, you're inferring that she would be an excellent host because she's.
That's not what I said. I just said you said that you never heard of her, and I said that she's cute. I didn't say she'd make a great host because she's cute. I mean, Katie Couric's perky and cute. That doesn't mean she's like a. I never would have thought Katie Couric would be someone they throw up there to host Jeopardy, though.
So they just finished with.
I think the best choice is right here. Charismatic, good looking, dresses well. I'm the best host for Jeopardy.
You can't even say
so
best
charismatic.
Host. You said best host.
I said best host. You said
you're
best
the one
host.
of the least articulate.
Yeah, right.
You're not nearly wide enough. So they're going to start.
I could be Wayne Brady White or Alfonso Ribeiro.
Wayne Brady.
No, I'm just kidding. I shouldn't do that. I'm the best.
Dr. Oz. No. They're Dr. Oz.
Best there was.
No, you're not. That's Bret Hart, not P.J. Robinson. Hey, Dr. Oz was on there, and they protested. Then they had Aaron Rodgers. I'm looking at the list.
It's always
Anderson Cooper just finished up. I'm sure he was fine. I haven't watched any of his. Bill Whitaker from 60 Minutes is coming up, and he would be interesting to look. Then there's this super dork named Buzzy Cohen, who's a former champion. I can't get behind that guy. So if he's on there 5 days a week, I'm going to have to turn that off. Then Mayim Bialik, whatever. Chick from Amy Farrah Fowler. Now, this woman's a doctor. She's got a real PhD.
No, she is. Brilliant, but I'm thinking like number one, she doesn't strike me as the charismatic type. She wears too much floral. And then number two, I don't want to get myself in trouble. We'll talk after air. Like so I have like a different chat that goes on with Irv and Rob and Mike Shaw. If you want to be a part of it, you can. I don't know.
I've only been asking for 10 years
to be part of it. I'm gonna add you to it.
I have a wrong complexion. I get it.
No, you don't. Because here's the thing about we talk about a lot of stuff. It's politically incorrect. I'm not saying what we talk about. It can be politically incorrect. I know you don't want to offend anybody. Me, I don't care about offending anyone. I'm just going to shoot from the hip. And so Mayim Bialik came up one time, and I'm just going to keep it there. Like, I'm just there. Like, and it wasn't anything bad.
That's one of the most long-winded non-statements I've ever heard you say.
I don't think
you said dick right there. You just spent 2 minutes of my life saying not a damn thing.
Got you. Anyway, there's a couple of things that I think we should talk about real quick.
Well, I didn't finish my list.
Oh,
Savannah Guthrie's coming up.
Okay,
she's amazing. She would be a good choice. Then Sanjay Gupta. I like that guy. George Stephanopoulos. Then Robin Roberts. Okay. And finally, LeVar Burton. And then David Faber. I don't even know who that is. But most of these, Joe Buck. Oh, that's why I wanted to go over this list. Joe Buck is going to end the season. That's why I want to talk about that. Why is Joe Buck doing Jeopardy? Aaron Rodgers has got a better job or a chance of getting it than Joe Buck. Why is Joe Buck? Why do people like Joe Buck?
Well, hold up.
His
I don't know.
dad?
Well, let me say this. I don't know how many people in St. Louis like Joe Buck because, for what I said, he's pretty reviled. And I think that's like the popular consensus. Me, I have a love-hate relationship with Joe Buck. I don't hate Joe, but I don't like him, right?
I met Joe
But
Buck
I
one
mean,
time. Let me tell you this
mhm,
story. It's a true story. It takes 10 seconds. You'll get much more time back than my 2 minutes. Okay. This is a 10-second story. And it's a true story. I went out, I took a day off work and I went out with Derek Chambers and Don Smith.
mhm.
Don Swank, excuse me. Don Smith was a kid from junior high, Don Swank. And
Don
we
Swink
spent the
hasn't
day.
accepted my friendship request on Facebook, and I'm calling him out on it.
Did you send it to the right identity? We'll talk off
Ricky Bobby.
yeah, Ricky Bobby. Well, the three of us went out and had a day. It was at the holidays, and we took a day off work,
Mhm,
and we went to the Pancake House, the original Pancake House in Chesterfield, and he
mhm,
was at the bar eating breakfast, and he was an asshole. He was an asshole in the moment,
mhm.
and that's I've got to presume that that's what he's always like. He is. It's amazing how politically incorrect he can be in a very subtle way in some cases. It's amazing how ignorant he can be in some cases. And it's not that amazing how annoying he is all of the fucking time. He says
Right.
some of the stupidest shit and presents it with such charisma, like you say,
Mhm, mhm.
that people buy into it. I hate the fact that he's the voice of the NFL right now for all practical
Right.
purposes.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
he and Troy Aikman might as well get a house together.
that's the consensus though. Like, I don't think a lot of people like Joe Buck. I kind of feel like Joe Buck has been forced upon us, to be
Right,
honest with you. Uh,
right.
and and like me with Joe, I kind of wrote him off a few years ago. Like, I don't hate him, but I don't like him. For sure I don't like him. I don't know if I'm at the point where I hate, but when he wrote that book and he's going on about hair plugs, I'm like, is this motherfucker serious right now? And he was serious. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I
I get it.
never. So
All right. So let's
few,
wrap this up. So you want to talk about a couple other things. We're at
we got a
90
few other
minutes.
things. Vaccinations are going on right now. I am fully vaccinated. I am a Pfizer person. So we're going on. Hopefully we'll have some sense of normalcy here in the next several months. I'm not going to say couple or few, several months, but I am vaccinated.
I'm vaccinated. I got the COVID in December, right? So I
Hmm.
already had some protection, and then I got Johnson and Johnson in March. I did not have a blood clot, so
Right.
it didn't work on me.
Right.
But I came out of it fine. You talk about normalcy, and some of the people I just talked about. I actually went with my family to a restaurant and sat down with some of our friends with masks off, and we sat and ate appetizers and entrees and drank some beer and talked face to face in a mixed company for 2 hours last night. It was the first normalcy I've had
Hmm.
in 13 months in that genre. And it was amazing. And we
Hmm.
didn't know what to say to each other. It started off like have you been, that kind of conversation. And it fell into place quickly, but it was interesting. And
Hmm.
I hope that we get to do a lot more of that.
Right.
I'm afraid that 50% of adults or 70, we're not going to get to the herd immunity level, and I'm concerned about at what point do we have to shut things back down later.
Hmm.
The longer this coasts and the longer that other places in the world are not protected, the better chance we have of a variant that these vaccines are not going to handle coming
Right.
out of somewhere.
Hmm.
And I would have hoped that we all would have gone out and got the vaccine. There's more
Hmm.
vaccines available than people that want to take it at this point.
Right.
And the only ones that haven't been vaccinated are the kids, and that's
Right.
coming. At what
Hmm.
point do we cut loss? At what point can I stop wearing my mask inside? If people want to be sick, let them be sick. But as long as the vaccines are working, at what point do I have to stop worrying about those people?
I know for me personally, like I thought about this. I will probably, to an extent, still continue to wear my mask, and here's the reason why. Um, when I sat down and thought about it, like I would go to the gym. Now I brought the gym to my house. Um, I thought about all these particular things, and I was like, I'm surprised we haven't had another pandemic here recently anyway, because it's a bunch of nasty ass people out there.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think I want to shake too many more hands anymore, high fives, or breathe some of the same air as some of these nasty folks. So, me personally, I think I'm going to continue wearing a mask. I used to make fun of those people I would see in the airport that would be walking around with a mask, and this was years before. Now I understand why. So I'm probably going to continue doing it. That
yeah.
said, I want to be able to get together with folks. So hey, I'm coming to St. Louis at the end of June. So
Well, I told you we have wine and a bonfire, so bring it.
cool. All
We're gonna
right,
have a
gotcha.
barbecue. Are you gonna be here 4th of July, or are you going back before that?
I will be back 4th of July. Then the next day we're going to Vegas. The wife and I are going to Vegas. We're going to keep our son in St. Louis. So we got some
Ah, I
travel
got you.
plans. We got some epic stuff going on. Couple of other things before we close out this show. Crypto is going crazy. You are a new crypto convert almost, but crypto's
We
going crazy.
shouldn't we shouldn't dwell on that too much because
Not
we
yet, not
probably
yet.
need to go do a whole episode or segment
Right,
on
we do.
crypto.
No, just wanted
But
to
yeah,
start. Just wanted to put it out there for people of what's going on. I tried to tell people early on, and now they're asking me about it. And so, crypto's doing some good stuff. And then the last two things I want to close with, which is probably going to upset some people. First, I'm going to start with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. WandaVision, WandaVision was okay. Me, it's all right. For me, it was okay. A lot of people they loved it, but I really like Falcon and the Winter Soldier personally. Really loved it. Good job on that.
I liked it. I was
Mhm.
asking one of our friends last night at the dinner about how he felt as a black person about the African American angle
He
in
should bring
Falcon and
his
Winter
ass on the
Soldier.
show. Bring your ass on the show because I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, but D Money is a punk ass bitch, and he's not coming
Ooh.
on the show.
I'm gonna make him come on the show with this next one.
He he's afraid.
Why?
He's afraid. He lacks the moral of his own convictions.
Oh,
He he doesn't want to be mansplained to. So, but yeah, I thought it was good. I was asking him his opinion. His brother was there too, and I was asking their opinion of how they handled that because I never anymore presume to understand or
hmm,
guess that I'm gonna you know. I used to do that. I thought I understood. I thought it was genuine, but no, I have the wrong color skin, and my life experiences do not inform me that much. So then it becomes a fair question. How do you think it
hmm,
was done? Was it pandering? Was it too much, too little? I thought it was brave. I thought it was interesting.
yeah, hmm,
I thought the second episode was terrible, and I thought every other episode was really good. I wasn't
hmm,
as huge. They always end kind of a little flat. Um, him as Captain America as a concept is great. I thought the effects were a little off. I felt his uniform could have been a little bit more. He
that's
looked
how
like
it
he was
looks
wearing
in the.
a turtleneck.
That's how it looks in the comic book, though. So
It does,
they did a faithful translation of it.
but is that always the right
Yeah,
answer?
yeah. Sometimes they should probably. Okay, we got to do a little bit with this design here.
Right.
Sometimes they should. Like I thought it. I love I love the show. For me personally, I felt it was a little short. I do like the fact because I was like, man, this would be great if this was actual movie. I like the fact that at the end of it, it was announced that. By the way, we're doing Captain America 4 on this because I feel a show. I feel something like Captain America should be ultra political in order to have that home run hitting effect. So I was good with that. I love the show. Um, like the John Walker character, if you read the book, he's a controversial figure and he's a controversial figure for the show. And I think they captured that. I wish they had gone more into the mythos of John Walker to explain why he's this crazy
But
mofo.
but but you always do this. You always talk about how the MCU is dropping the ball, not telling these stories from the comics.
Because
That
some of them are amazing stories.
but
Some of
but,
them are amazing.
but you got to. I said this before, and I think Irv said this to you. That you've got to give them time. They only
Right.
have
Mhm.
6 episodes. They cannot do an entire progression of John Walker's history.
No, I know.
Because to do that in a way that it would sell, number one, wouldn't sell because it would be boring at some point. Number two, you're talking about a much bigger, a much rich. In comic books, you can do things that you can't do on TV or in movies, especially in a constrained environment. A series of episodes, a 3-hour movie or less, a certain amount of budget. You've got to pick and choose those stories. You were talking about why they didn't use why they didn't do Armor Wars, because that's one of 20 stories that they could have told with Robert Downey Jr. And ultimately, he could only make half a dozen movies. He's had to move on. Good news is Armor Wars is coming, but it's going to be a
But
War Machine story, and it's
but
going
you
to be a
can't
TV series.
but you can't tell me though, like I get where you're coming from, but when you put out an abortion that is Iron Man 3, no, you can do a 2-hour Armor Wars if you're going to put that bullshit out.
But that's them making mistakes. I agree 100%. Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 are both poor movies. Avengers 2 ages a little better. It's better the fourth time you watch it in hindsight
Mm-hmm.
than it was when it was first done, but it's badly executed.
Mm-hmm.
They've learned those lessons to their credit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And part
Right.
of that is Kevin Feige backing off. Part of it is Kevin Feige getting rid of the production by committee and going, no, I'm going to be the only guy. And part of it is having some trust in people like the Russo brothers
Mm-hmm.
to tell a story. Where are the constraints that you want? What points do you want us to hit in what order?
Right.
What do you want things to look like when the movie's over? And then let us tell the story hitting those points. Don't come
I
in
will
here
right.
every day.
I will say this about the John Walker here. Not that you have to do a full, like the John Walker mythos aren't that, his backstories aren't that deep to where you got to spend like 3-4 episodes or a whole movie on them. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand the importance of certain characters. Someone like Iron Man with all this other stuff, there are things that define who he is. With John Walker, like they couldn't do this. It would have been nice that they introduced in the movies. They couldn't do it. I'm fine with that. But when you take about, he's a very right-wing guy that's cast into being Captain America, and then like a hate group like actually killed his family, calls him to like think along things a bit differently. Like I think you can do that in half an episode, right? In my opinion.
But
But
that's not the character they wanted to have on the screen.
right,
And
it's not.
it's not the character that would work in the long run, because it's better to have him be kind of normal and then have those kinds of same impactful things happen to him
Mm-hmm,
while the show is executing, so that
mm-hmm,
he arrives in the same place. So he is now a little bit wackadoodle crazy. He is now
mm-hmm,
a little bit junked up and
mm-hmm,
powerful. He is now in with we don't know what agenda as U.S. agent. So there's a story to be told, and they're going to get to
mm-hmm.
it. There
Right,
clearly is a Dark Avengers and or Young Avengers series coming. They're laying the groundwork for this guy.
right.
So
And
give
I'm
me
good with
more
that.
of this.
And I'm
They
good with that.
this. Yeah.
No, it was a great it was a great show. I like me personally, I love the show. I like Bucky's evolution. I like Sam's evolution. Like I love the show, the Flag Smashers and stuff. I loved it. Now something I didn't love, and this is how we're gonna get who we're talking about DC on the show, because I saw his post on social media. The Snyder Cup of Justice League. This is the last thing I have on my list. Man, look, I'm sorry. Like DC was instantly posted. Oh my God, this is so much better. Dude, that was 4 fucking hours of my time that I will never get back. Now, look, was it better than the one that Joss Whedon put out? Yes, it was.
Yes.
But it couldn't be worse, right? There was no way it could be worse. So by proxy, it was better. And they used a lot more of what Snyder had filmed in the Joss Whedon cut than what they led to believe. Okay? All they did was expand this movie by almost 2 hours. And it's like, this thing still didn't accomplish anything. And I'm not trying to hate on it because I wanted to like it. I was like, okay, if you're going to give this guy his full vision, I know what I'm walking into as far as Zack Snyder as a director, and what I saw from Batman versus Superman. I didn't have too many high expectations because you and I talked about this, because it was
Yeah.
by proxy that people were like, oh, it's going to be so much better because they hated Josh Whedon. And I think we said on a show, it's like, let's pump the brakes because we
Right.
saw Batman versus Superman
Right.
and we didn't like that.
It's just like the people. It's like Josh Whedon comes in and mauls the thing. Josh Whedon is persona non grata because of Avengers 2. He's retreating. Maybe it's his fault. Maybe it's not. Oh nope, we saw what he did with this movie, so it's definitely him. And then, oh, by the way, he's been molesting young
Right.
women. So now he's out. Right. So in contrast, everybody's on Snyder's. He's great. No, stop. He made one good movie. He made 300. All right. He took Frank Miller's work and he married it up with some novelty technology and slow motion, and he was able to deliver a visual experience that matched the comic and was stylish and had not been seen up to that point. And that's purely good timing and good luck on his part.
Yes.
Every single thing else he's done since then has been garbage. So why is his I'm going to go back and finish the garbage that I've been making, and I have an unlimited budget to self-indulge myself for the first time since at least The Watchmen. And it's going to be more garbage. It was terrible. You do not need Aquaman jumped out of the water, said some shit, and then went back in the water 3 times. Not once, 3 times. He reintroduced himself to the viewer 3 times. Shit didn't happen for the first hour. They spent 40 minutes of slow motion? I do not need to see the Flash running in slow motion.
He's the Flash. At some point, we got to see him run fast. Bruh, I could break down this whole, like, everybody was like, oh, the Snyder Cut. Look, it was just as bad as it was the first damn time I saw it. It was like all they did was add 2 more hours of bad filmmaking.
Superman is wearing black. Cool. Bet. Why? Can you tell me why?
You got 4 hours. You should be able to tell me why. Right.
So I liked that they expanded the Cyborg story. I liked that they expanded the Flash story. The rest of it, and that didn't require an additional hour and a half.
No, it didn't.
So the rest of it was just terrible garbage. And that last 10 minutes, holy fuck, what was that? The future of it. Oh no, you know what's even worse? Martian Manhunter was the worst. It was terrible.
I don't even know where to start.
I was Martian Manhunter the whole time.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start with that. It's like a lot of people were just jumped up there. It's like, no, it's like I said, I went into it objective. I was like, I expect this to be better, but I know who I'm dealing with as a filmmaker. And I'm sorry. Like,
Martian Manhunter goes in the hallway and says, I'm not really Martha. I'm Martian Manhunter, and now I'm going to fly away. And we're all going, whoa, why the fuck? What? Go back and watch the movie and say it was Martian Manhunter. It doesn't make any sense. Then at the end, he rolls up on Wayne Manor or wherever the hell Bruce Wayne
wherever that was.
He's like, next time I got your back. Cool. All right. And then they split up. Dude, where the fuck were you 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, didn't make any goddamn sense.
Look, man, it's like I'm sorry. Like I said, I went into it wanting it to be better, and bruh, it wasn't even in widescreen.
You're exactly correct. I had a whole list and I'd forgotten, but yeah, why? Oh, it's in 4:3. Why?
It's like, like that doesn't even make any sense. You got an unlimited budget and you want to do Blu-ray, 4K sales and all that. Well, my original vision was for it to be in 4:3. Get the fuck out of here, man. Come on, dude. No, get out of here with that nonsense.
He's done. And the sad part is that people like DC are going to be, we need more of this. We need to continue the Snyderverse. No, you do not. You are continuing the Snyderverse. It's a hot mess. You made Wonder Woman 1984, which was worse than the first one. It was a terrible movie. You're still making a Flash movie, but it's going to have a different Batman. It's going to be Michael Keaton Batman. Maybe he's going to travel the universe. I don't know. But no one's going to see these movies. So DC needs to put DC needs to learn from Marvel, and they need to say, or you know what they need to do? They need to learn from Sony. They need to learn from what Sony went through with Marvel, and they need to realize that they have products that people will want to see, but they have got to start slow and build their audience and build their world. And this jumping in and then thrashing around like you're in
Yeah.
the middle of a feeding frenzy doesn't work.
It's like,
It
yeah,
clearly has not worked.
they need some control over that because they're still talking about we want to do these movies. Then you're doing another Batman, and it's like, what rules are you setting? Because we've talked about this. When it comes to your universe, it's about what rules are you setting that you can and cannot break. And right now, they have no rules. And in order to try to get around not having any rules, they want to throw in sloppy stuff like, oh, we got the multiverse. Now we can bring back Michael Keaton and say, here's how he fits in. That's sloppy storytelling to me to try to fix what they effed up.
They are literally delivering at this point, and I consider this. I know it's not at the same time, but right now they're working with three different Batmans, and that's not counting the ones from 10 years ago that everybody likes,
Mm-hmm.
and that they
Yeah.
think about. That's Batman in Main Street people's minds. But you still have Snyderverse Batman. You still
Mm-hmm.
have you've got Michael Keaton coming back, whatever that's going to be, and you've got this new guy,
You got Ben Affleck, right?
Ben Affleck, but there's also Jason Priestley or who the fuck the kid from Twilight
Oh,
is going
oh
to be
yeah.
Batman.
What's
Well,
his
so
name?
that's coming next year. You know,
Patterson.
seriously, how do you expect people to take you? How do you expect people to want to come see your movies if you're not telling a consistent story?
Right.
People go see. Look, a Superman or a Marvel movie comes out, and maybe like okay, my daughter is a big fan of Groot. Right, she's 12, so she
Mm-hmm.
wants to see all the Guardians of the Galaxy. She loves the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. She could care less about Ant-Man, but she sits down and watches it because she knows that both of them are going to be in the Avengers. Right,
Right.
so they've got the cross pollination going on. That's the key to building a franchise. That's why Marvel is printing money. That's why
Mm-hmm.
Marvel's trying. Disney's trying so hard to do the same thing with Star Wars because people sat down and watched goddamn Vision, Scarlet Witch, or WandaVision
Mm-hmm.
all the way through because there's a chance that impacts the larger universe, and they want to not miss that. Plus, it's COVID and they have nothing else to watch. But you, to a certain degree, have a momentum going with Marvel now that you could just produce something, and if it's not total shit, people are going to watch it and come back for more because it's become the de facto universe that they're invested in. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to build a universe for people to be invested in before they're going to invest in it.
Right.
And that's something that Disney needs to figure out with Star Wars. And it's something that DC really needs to do with the Warner Brothers needs to do with their DC characters because there's potential there. People don't hate Superman.
No.
Comic book fans do, but Main Street people don't.
Right.
People don't hate Batman, but build a world that they did it with a TV series, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah. That.
Arrowverse.
Yeah.
So
Which
just take
makes
the
no
same
sense.
concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take the same concept and make movies out of it, but make a grounded, legitimate movie. Quit trying to make, quit trying to hit a home run every single time. Quit trying to be Disney when you
Mm-hmm.
haven't done the work. Start over. Take a 2-year break, and then come
Yep.
out with a new movie.
I agree. And then apparently The Rock is campaigning to bring back the Snyderverse, and he's got Black Adam. It's like it's a mess. They need to stop, like you said, they need to take a couple of year break. And within that year, those 2 years, figure out what is it that we want to do? What are we trying to do?
Or, or quit trying to do that and just make one-off movies like we had back before the 90s,
And you
before
can
the
do
X-Men
that.
started a universe, right? Before when Iron Man came out and the movie came out, everybody thought it was an Iron Man world. And then at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the movie, Nick Fury stepped out, and then those of us who had expected that said, "Aha!" And then the Hulk came out a month later, and now
Mm-hmm.
we had two movies that would be good, that were the seeds of something that's grown into something much larger. But before that, it didn't happen. You made a movie
Mm-hmm.
with Superman, you made 2 or 3 sequels, then that story was played out, then you did Batman for a while, and over here you did this, and oh, these
Mm-hmm.
guys did that. Spider-Man was the original Spider-Man trilogy was not part of a larger universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's fairly recent.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But pick what you're doing. Don't try to
Right.
act like, oh, this is going to be a shared universe. And then you make something that's like, well, it's not really shit. They don't know what they want to do.
Is Shazam 2 going to be in the same universe as Black Adam? And are they both supposed to be in the Snyderverse? Because I can't tell.
I don't know. Exactly. I don't know. And DC, if you're watching, you can come on the show and tell us, like, oh, I don't want to mansplain or anything like that. We're not going to
DC,
do that. I want to have an outright discussion or fight because I hated the Snyder cut.
if you're watching, belay that shit. You've got your script guy right there, and you've got your producer right here. We'll save you a lot of trouble, and we'll make you a lot of money. Just come hire us.
Right. It's like
I have a
whatever.
PGA behind my name.
There you go. I got an MBA. We can do this, but it's like, if you don't know what you want to do, then give some power to somebody to say, here's what we are going to do. Do
Right.
that.
And make a
But
plan.
make a plan.
All right. That's
That's
2 hours, Pierre.
that's been awesome. That was the last thing on the list. It's been good catching up with you.
Yeah. And again, this is episode 1 of a second season. We are back. We are black, except those of us who aren't. We are bad. We're going to do some more episodes. So it's recorded on May 2nd. Watch for it to drop in the next couple of days. And we're going to try to do this every week or so.
That's right.
COVID is over. Time to get back to life.
Holla.